that you were at my place.
Yeah.
Exactly the same site.
But no loft.
Oh,
So that's what we're adding, and that makes a big difference. It's sleeping quarters, bedrooms, yeah.
well, no, I think
I'll bring pictures.
Painted our basement for, well, this was 30 years ago.
1 minute.
This part, this part.
And it's working, you know?
I kind of wanted to switch houses with them. I have a big house. I'll move into mine, I'll move into yours.
Work better.
No? Location, is that, yeah, right. Yep.
That I did, just, it is all, I forgot to take my allergy medicine.
Even with it, I feel bad, so you gotta be miserable.
Yeah, I think my Zyrtec and then my
You
nose
wield the
spray.
gavel today?
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Your microphone.
She's in
What's that?
Your microphone is way up in the sky.
Yeah, I thought she
Does that
left
not
when I saw her the tacos.
Idea.
She's like, a couple days, like, a couple days.
It's a thing.
Yeah. I'll never get over that. That was,
Think that he's with her?
made my life right there.
I got the tarts.
Yeah.
Good morning. Welcome, and would you please rise and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mission of Cook County is supporting community through quality service, and we will go to our agenda. And do we have any adjustments?
Commissioner, we have one I'd like to add as item 11C, which is a resignation notice we received just this morning.
Okay, so that would be 11C.
Please.
Okay. Has everyone had a chance, I assume you have, to look at the agenda? Is there anything you want to be pulled or discussed further, or are we ready for a motion to approve the agenda? Consent agenda.
No, approve the agenda as written first.
Okay, excuse me, agenda as written first, thank you.
I'll move to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. And then, the consent, excuse me. I haven't done this for a while. Public comment period. I'd like to read the guidelines for Cook County Board of Commissioners public comment, and I welcome all of you that want to be here and express yourself. So it's a time for you to express your concerns about county concerns. When invited to speak, please state your name, address, and topic you are addressing, and please hold up your hand and I'll call on you. Members of the public may speak respectfully for up to 5 minutes. The public comment period is limited to a total of 30 minutes. County board members may ask or answer questions of the speaker, but issues shall not be debated during the public comment period. At the board's discretion, the board may agree to schedule matters addressed during the public comment period on the current board agenda or on a future board agenda. All discussions must be civil in nature and must be directed at the board and not to other members of the public. So if you would like to speak to us this morning, would you please raise your hand? Okay, let's start in the back. Don, would you state your name and write your name down?
My name is Don Davison. I live up on Maple Hill, and I want to show up here today to discourage you from stopping to tape the meetings. I think it's really important, and it's a public service to have those tapes available. And I want to give you an example from just last week. I was down at one of the gas stations to buy my newspaper, and a friend came up and said, "Did you hear that the county board is talking about not taping their meetings anymore?" And I said, "That's just crazy talk. They're talking about how they want to be more transparent and they want to figure out how to get their word out." And he said, "If you don't believe me, go watch the videotape." So I did, and sure enough, that was discussed. If you do decide to do that, please let me know. There's already a handful of people, including me, who will volunteer to make these tapes. We'll post them to YouTube and give you a copy. And guess what? Data. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you for expressing your concerns, Don. And next, we'll start in the back. Hand up again, please. Okay, let's go with Gordon.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gordon Salisbury from Hoagland. I don't know if 5 minutes is enough, but I will try. First and foremost, I'm sorry that Jenny's not here. Thanks to you Commissioners for the time that you commit to the county and to the residents. I'm not certain, but I think it's maybe something like a church board or school board, sometimes kind of thankless. But thank you for being here and doing some of the hard stuff. I want to express my concern that you have the power to do some stuff, but just because you have the power doesn't mean you should. And the cases that come to mind, I can come up with a couple of 2-3 thoughts. The Hovland Garage. May or may not need demolition. Just because you can do it, it doesn't necessarily mean you should do it, I believe. The Tier 3, or now conversation around Tier 2 jail, doesn't make any sense. And just because you can do it, I don't think that you necessarily should do it. Dovetailing on Don Davison's remark about the recording or not recording of these meetings, just because you have the power to turn off the camera doesn't mean you should. My perception, my sense is that the trust in the processes and the commission is compromised, quite compromised, and I believe that the turning off of the camera will compromise that trust further. I think 4 weeks ago in that commissioners meeting, I think it was acknowledged that more transparency, more public meetings, more fireside kind of meetings would be a good thing for the commission and the individual commissioners to have with their individual constituencies, and I think that can only help. I think turning the cameras off will only hurt. I had said this also in another meeting. You folks are entrusted with the resources and the goodwill of the voter and the taxpayer, the community at large, and you are charged as stewards of the resources. And we as voters and taxpayers expect you to be thoughtful and good stewards of those resources. I don't know if this is possible, but if you could hit the stop button on the Hovland Garage and reassess, I think that would be a good idea. My understanding is those contracts, that bid has been passed or allotted. So, but if you could stop that, I think that would be a good idea. I would suggest that as it relates to the jail, that you look more closely at Minnesota Department of Corrections and their view on additional bed space, and the Arrowhead Regional Development Commission and their view on additional bed spaces for the Arrowhead region. And their thought is that there's no need for additional beds, and much less here in Cook County. Your sources of information should be those kinds of legitimate sources rather than marketing organizations like Wold. Wold just wants to sell you something. They're going to tell you what they think is going to help you spend the money with them. I guess in summary, you have the power. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. Again, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. Next, we'll go to Betsy, I think, and please state your name and sign in.
I'm Betsy Bowen. I'm a local artist, and I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to hang art. It's my artwork that's hanging out in the hallway areas here, and I just think it's a really nice thing to have. It's creditable to have have that part of the community recognized and represented. I think in the courthouse where so many other parts, important parts of the community happen. And I think I'm just only one of, lots of artists that make things here. And it's especially, having local work, and it's uplifting, I think. I noticed when I was hanging it, so many people that, for whom this is a daily environment came by and said, "Oh, good, thank you, no more bare walls." So it's a short, it's temporary, but it's just my turn. And so I just wanted to say, hope that can continue. It's a nice opportunity in a lot of ways. So thanks.
Thanks for making our walls pretty.
Thank you, Betsy, and to all the other artists in our community. It's a real big part of who we are.
Thanks.
It's good to have it in public display, and thanks. Okay, Greg, next.
Artist Day. I'll be brief. I want to thank the commissioners for their continued support of the YMCA. I work with Myron quite a bit on that. And I'm a daily user, and I'm on the advisory board, and the use far exceeds its capacity sometimes, and it's one of the, probably, I think, one of the highest used facilities of its size in the country. So thanks for your support. I wouldn't have moved here without it. And on an artsy note, I want to thank Jeff in particular for coming to the Creative Economy Collaborative last month. We're a newly formed group charged with trying to bring an aesthetic and a design, particularly to the Highway 61 project, and keeping the arts thriving in Cook County. So thanks for all you do in supporting the arts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your service.
Okay, we'll go back over there in the corner. Please state your name. please.
Jeremy Hansen, and I live down in Lutzen. And I'll read from prepared comments that I'll leave with you after the fact. County Commissioners, County Attorney Hicken, County Administrator Cabwell, thank you for your time and the roles that you play in the community. My extended family and I have lived in Cook County for many years. My parents built and lived for many years at the end of the Gunflint Trail. My brothers and their families have fond memories of our life there, still visit often. And my family counts Cook County as our permanent residence today. I'm here to offer my imperfect comments surrounding the purchase of land on Pike Lake Road by Seth Jeffs through Emerald Industries LLC. I say imperfect because I don't know what Seth's intentions are. And I can't possibly understand all that goes on behind the scenes on a county level to address a situation like this. I say to Seth and to you, please forgive me for the mistaken assumptions I'm likely to make or suggest. First, while we may struggle with the customs of a religious group, my comments do not surround religious beliefs and values. Cook County is home to people with a broad range of political, social, and religious views, home to people from many faiths and spiritual traditions, and indeed no faith at all. This is a point of pride for us in this county. In a strict sense, this is not about religion at all. The religious cover is a distraction. My concerns are pointed at well-documented and disturbing patterns of criminal behavior, and my interest is in how we will respond as a community. First, to the criminal behavior. When I first heard of this story, I was curious but not alarmed. Like all of us, I lead a busy life and was not moved to make this a personal priority. As I learned more, I felt compelled to act in some way. So if you are where I was in the beginning, curious but not alarmed enough to make it a priority, please take time to study the history. This history is well documented, and the journalism is largely serious and credible. The criminal and civil actions are, of course, a matter of public record. And it is important to note that not all members of the FLDS are guilty of criminal behavior. In fact, and this may become important if they become a part of this community someday, many deserve our compassion and support. But please study this. The detailed nature of the activity covered in the court record alone will likely move you to act. This is the hard part. What can I do? What should we be doing? It was a hard one for me, so it may be hard for each of you. How do we express our concern in a manner that is both inclusive and accepting of others, and firmly against disturbing criminal behavior? How do we protect our own rights without trampling on the rights of others? What roles do we play as citizens, as elected officials, as law enforcement and justice system officials, business owners, clergy? We each have to answer this question for ourselves. The coming weeks may come and go with a whisper. I hope this is the case. But when roads firm up in early June and Emerald Industries is within its right to act on the land use permit, we won't want to be in a reaction mode. You may already have carefully considered the roles you will play, individually and collectively, to address and manage this process. If so, thank you. The rest of us are catching up. If you have more work to do on this, that's okay too. We're all in this together and we're learning. To finish, I have a few questions. What can we expect from our elected officials and from other community leaders in the coming weeks? What roles will you play? And what do you expect from us, from citizens like me and from others? How will we come together in a way that is professional, respectful, appropriately firm, and reflects common purpose? I am one of many citizens who are thankful for the role that you play. Let us know how we can support you and each other. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Something to think about. Jarvis?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I would like to ask some questions today, And that is because we have a budget process that is soon to be underway, and a whole lot of folks who are going to be having some input into what that means for the county. So these are just kind of thinking things that I think the community is interested in, and so here I go. One is, would like an update on the dog project, where our drug dog is at as far as the number of hours of use that he has seen, where he is with his training, is he actually being used yet? There was a very large overtime for one of the officers, and I'm guessing that some of that was due to the dog, so just curious as to where he is at. How useful is he for us? And what do we expect for changes in the future? Last year, I believe you told us that we would have no new hires, and I think that we have you just approved 2 in the Social Services Department for mental health. You also are considering transitioning a couple contract people to staff. That sounds like new hires to me. Contracts don't have benefits, staff people do. Staff people have permanency. There's a discussion about the commissioners and a cost of living. Currently, I think the commissioner's base is about the same as many of the people in the community who are working full-time jobs and carrying 40-pound sacks of potatoes and sweeping sidewalks, and so and they're working full-time as well. Being a commissioner, I would have thought would be something like being in public service is not something that money can reward you for. There's more to it than just money to be sitting where you are and making those decisions. A cost of living to me doesn't sound like that's necessarily the best way to go about getting a quality commissioner, if that's where you're at. In the board packet, there was an information piece on the Hoveland Public Works and the YMCA bathroom, but there was no information, so I'm just wondering, is there some information, or is the information basically the fact that you're giving us a piece of paper with nothing on it? I'm looking for some detail, I guess, as to what this information is going to be. My last question is about the lease for vehicles that you signed about a year ago, and I'm just wondering how that's working out for us in the county. Is it doing what it was supposed to do? Is it saving us money? Is it getting us better cars? Is it getting us better service? Where is it at? And that's all I have for today, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Arvis.
Anyone else for public comment? If not, we'll go on to the consent agenda items. Is there any that you would like to have pulled as commissioners?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
Support.
We have support. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we'll go on to our first agenda item, which is Community Center, Warming House Project Update. Diane?
Good morning.
Morning.
Well, I'm here today because we're moving forward with the Warming House project and some of the other projects that are going on at the community center. And in your packet, you should have had some information about the Warming House building project, 2 contracts with S&C Masonry, one for the site prep work, vault toilet installation, removal of the old warming house and hockey equipment shed, up to about $20,500. The second contract for a 30 by 52 cement slab for the warming house to be built. And there should also be a couple of other contracts in there, 2 contracts with Max Wallers, one for building the vault toilets, and the other one would be for actually building the building, up to $40,000 worth of labor for the building, and another one for up to $15,000 of labor for the vault toilets. And then we have estimate from Nordic Electric for wiring the warming house building for $14,530 and $1,000 for electric heaters for the vault toilets. We also have an estimate from Jay's Heating for warming house gas furnace, venting, and ductwork up to $6,886. And then we have an estimate from Edwin E. Thorson's to put in a gravel overflow parking lot. That's the parking lot we've talked about for over 20 years to increase the safety behind the community center by the ball field. It allows a place for people to actually park when they're using the Little League field. It also allows now space for people who are using the community gardens, and it also allows for access to the new warming house that will be built. So that is also in there, and I'm here today to say that these projects were talked about numerous times, and we have a number of amounts of funding. We had $725,000 in bonds that were sort of allocated towards community center park improvements. In addition to that, we had $60,000 allocated from the 1% sales tax for the warming house project. We have $32,000 allocated from the Cook County Amateur Hockey Association, and $35,000 in grant funds from Lloyd K. Johnson for the 0 to 5 playground. So all of these projects are kind of in the works, but what I need today is a motion for you to approve those contracts for the warming house, the vault toilet, and the parking lot area. And do you have any questions? I know it's fast and quick, but a lot of stuff there.
Okay, so let's start with Commissioner Dukirk. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm speechless. I know, you're looking at me going, wow, Heidi usually has something to say. And I don't really have a nice way to say it. This project started before I was elected.
Yep.
You've been very dedicated with community members and working on this and moving it forward. And more than anything, I would like to thank you for your dedication and for sticking with us and making sure this gets done. I know it's small, but it'll be important to the community. I know it's important to the people that use the facility. The part where I'm speechless is public comment this morning telling us to put the brakes on everything, but there was no request to put the brakes on this. So that's why I'm speechless. I don't think we need to put the brakes on this. This is something that we've been asked to do over and over again, and we've worked very diligently to put everything in order to finally get it done. So I'm glad you're still here to see it get done.
Well, and I would have to thank the contractors who are willing to actually reduce their prices to make this work.
And the commissioners for continuing to keep this going.
Right.
And to not stop on it, so it's kind of exciting, but I just don't know what to think about it, so thank you.
Commissioner Dushaw? Dushaw, excuse me.
Well, mine's a little different here. I see some bids that we got, and 3 out of the 4 bids are just numbers. If you look at Edwin Thorson's bid, it's broke down nicely.
Right.
This one here from S&C Masonry or Crawford Excavation just says site prep, it says $8,000. What do we get for this $8,000?
Well, part of the issue is because there's a lot of bedrock there, and because we're not, siting the building is actually going to have to move depending upon what we find for the underlayment. That is an issue. So it could be, we're hoping it will be less than that, but that's the highest amount we're expecting it to go. As you know, building is not an exact science back there. All of that land was mitigated. I mitigated it back in, 1996 or 97. So it was wetlands that we mitigated. We put some fill back there in portions of it, but there are portions that we did not put fill in. And so, to be honest, we don't know what we're going to find exactly. So that's probably why it's pretty inexact.
Yeah, and then the other estimate from S&C Masonry says a 30 by 50 slab. Why aren't we getting breakdowns on this? And I think that was the same for the Nordic Electric one. I like to see breakdowns. I know where I work, I have to break everything down. So, that's all I got.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you for bringing this, continuing to work on this. I know it's been a long process, and I'm jumping in at the tail end of things and playing catch up and learning a lot as I go. And I have attended one warming house meeting and then just the one community center meeting, and that was kind of where everything's coming to a head. I just was wondering if we had a chance to look through the contract. Ollie, have you had a chance to look through the contracts?
Diane has basically drafted these based on templates that
Okay.
I provided her.
Okay.
They require a final review and finalization, and she provided them to me at least a week ago to do that.
Okay.
But I still need a couple days, so what I was whispering to Jeff over there is that I need a couple days, and I would ask the commissioners to delegate signatory authority to Jeff Cadwell after, and you don't have to do that, but I just need somebody who can sign, who will be available to sign them in the next couple days, so we don't delay the warming house project by my final review. Specifically, I need to look into the bonding requirements. That's something I hadn't had a chance to do yet.
Okay. Thank you.
So perhaps delegate signatory authority to someone after final attorney review and amendments.
Yep. I wouldn't have thought anything of it, just that I noticed the board chair is listed as Heidi Dukirk, so I figured that was.
That's how long it's been.
Didn't know. I assumed it was a template, but that was.
It's a template,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm not an attorney. I do the best I can,
Yeah,
but.
yeah.
You just play one on TV.
Yep, and I know there's been difficulties both finding contractors and just working within the budgetary restraints.
It's a small project
Yeah.
for contractors, one.
Right.
And two, I would say that a lot of if we want the work done locally, a lot of contractors don't always have the expensive bonding and things. And I guess I would prefer to see us be able to support our local contractors, which is what we're trying to do with this project.
Yeah, thank you. I think otherwise I don't have any further questions.
Okay, so any further comment? Then I would entertain a motion to delegate authority to Jeff Cadwell pending review by our county attorney.
I'll make a motion to approve the projects pending county attorney review and having Administrator Cadwell as the signator.
Second.
So.
Was that correct, Molly, for motion? Okay.
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Let's go on to, thank you, Diane.
Thank you,
For all
Diane.
you've done on that and everything else that you do.
Commissioner Bershheim, I'd just like to add one point of clarification on
Sure.
that. Of course, that also includes the pile of permits with the city that I need to sign off on as well.
Okay, well, I would assume that would
Yep, all
fit.
contracts.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Highway Engineer Kristen Foster on geotechnical testing services contract, and we need approval on that.
Good morning, Commissioners, colleagues, and members of the public.
Morning.
Today I'm here primarily to talk about the geotechnical testing services that we need to provide for this summer's construction projects. At the same time, however, I'm happy to take questions on other topics while I'm here. I will start by telling you a little bit more details about geotechnical testing services. As I've talked about in the past, we're typically a staff of 4 technical positions in the engineering department. I'm pleased to see that we have found an engineering supervisor after about a year of looking for that position, and thank you for your support this morning in continuing to recruit to fill the final 4th position in the form of a technician for the highway department. When we deliver a project, there are a few phases involved: the scoping and design of a project, permitting, and the construction administration responsibilities, which is what this Braun Intertech contract or agreement relates to primarily. When folks drive by construction projects or when we're working with contractors on a project, the 4 technical positions that we have in the highway department are on-site, day-to-day. They're working directly with the contractor day-to-day, putting in the long hours to coordinate the work that's being done. They are tracking the quantities for payment, but at the same time, they have a very important quality oversight role for our construction projects, not just limited to the road construction projects, but also the site work or the dirt work, in other words, that we'll need to do for this summer's Hovland Shop Foundation. In soliciting for these services to augment the staff that we already have for the highway department, we received 3 proposals, and highway department staff reviewed the proposals on my behalf. What really stuck out, or I would say made the Braun Intertech agreement rise to the top in our recommendation, was they do have a couple of main points of contact for our project, but they also have the ability to provide other staff if needed. Construction is sometimes unpredictable. There might be a need for on-site inspections for both Hovland Shop and the South Shore Drive project, or maybe even our 2 Island River box culvert on the same day. And a larger firm such as Braun Intertech has the ability to help us even if we have multiple projects going on concurrently. Braun Intertech also has the ability to provide us with soil investigation services if we need additional technical information as we're planning for our future road projects. That's not included at this time, but they have provided their rates, and they do have the ability to help us with that if we run into it this summer. I know one of the needs that I get a lot of questions about is the Saginaw slide up the Gunflint Trail in particular, and if we need additional information on the soils that are contributing to that problem, that is something, for example, that Braun Intertech could help us out with if we ask them to. Also, as the 3 proposals were reviewed for these services, Braun Intertech offered the lowest rate, and at the same time, they have the most relevant experience, which is always great to see. So they have experience specifically with what is required for a state-funded construction project, such as South Shore Drive, and what we need to do from day to day to stay in compliance with state requirements for that project. They've worked on similar projects and specifically highlighted that in the resume of their staff that they provided. Their $65 an hour rate was the cheapest of the firms that were reviewed. Also, many of the per test rates that other firms would typically charge additional for were included in Braun Intertech's base rate. So those are a few, in summary, those are a few of the things that really made Braun's proposal rise to the top, and that's what formulated our recommendation to you this morning. Now, overall, the cost of this agreement could vary. That depends on what we need from day to day, what hours are the contractors going to work on these projects, how many projects will we have going on concurrently, how much of this are we going to be able to do ourselves versus how often we need to call in Braun for help. On a small project, I've seen costs be maybe as low as $5,000 to $10,000 per project for these type of services from a consultant. At the same time, if we get into a situation where we need full-time on-site inspection, that could run Cook County anywhere between $30,000 to $40,000 a month. So that is why there isn't a contract value included. It's not, we're not really easily able to predict what this agreement could cost us. What we do know, however, is how we're going to pay for it. The engineering costs that it takes to deliver our projects, whether we're talking about our own staff or consultant staff, are included in our project budgets for all of the projects this summer.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Dusha?
You really got butchering my name today.
I'm sorry. Okay, correct me again.
It's Dusha.
Dusha. I thought it was due.
I'm due.
Okay.
He's Dave.
Yeah, I think this is a good contract. They've worked with us up in Grand Portage. They know the area, and I think it'll work.
Commissioner Mills?
One of the questions I often have with hiring contractors, especially dealing with soils, for our areas, just if they have experience in our area, and I see looking through their work history that they have plenty of experience both up in Grand Portage as well as in Duluth as well, so that was encouraging, and I just think it looks like a really great option for us, so thank you for finding them out.
Commissioner Dukert?
No questions.
So, if there's no more further discussion, we'd entertain a motion for approval for the on-call geological testing services contract with Brown Intertech as delineated in the document that was attached, and with authorization for the highway engineer to sign and execute the contract.
So moved.
Okay, do we have a second?
Support.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand, and aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks for all you do.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay, for maintenance regarding LEC server room fire suppression system. Brian, welcome.
Good morning.
Hi, Brian.
Rena and I are here to ask for approval to put in a new fire suppression system at the law enforcement center in the server room. Currently, we have taken out the sprinklers that were in there. Reason being is that if one piece of equipment catches on fire or has an issue, then it would sprinkle everything and it would take out everything over there. So we researched, or Rena did a lot of research for it, and we came up with this from Brothers Fire for $21,100 for a new system that will work well in there.
Okay. Questions, concerns? Commissioner Mills?
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Kurt?
Isn't it nice to have money in your budget when these things pop up?
It is.
Shaw?
No questions.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
AT&T lease for old Ski Hill Tower. Rena, this is to approve a tower lease agreement with AT&T.
Good morning, Commissioners. Morning.
Morning.
The substitute chair. So this is a great contract for the county. AT&T has been on the other tall tower up above the hill up there, owned by WDSC, and AT&T has not been able to increase their service up here because that tower just structurally couldn't hold it. So we got a request to move to our tower that Verizon and WTIP is on, and so that's what this is for. So it represents two things that are pretty awesome. One is a very significant increase in AT&T service in this area, which really helps our public safety folks, because that comes with the FirstNet piece. And number two, it, as you can see, represents a significant amount of revenue to the county that we didn't get before. So, so the amount that this contract is for, I have it in front of me somewhere here.
35,700.
Is 35, where's it at on there? Did I put it on here?
I have that.
$35,784. And that has a 2% every year increase for a, basically a 25-year lease. So it really helps us with our capital needs for these towers. So the replacements we have coming up. So the request today is to approve this tower lease agreement with AT&T. I'm happy to answer any other questions they might have.
Okay, any questions, comments? Going to my right, Dukert, Commissioner Dukert.
No, I can just imagine the amount of time that this is taking, so thank you for all the work that you're doing. I know now that the snow is melting, things are going to start moving again.
doing a contract with a company like AT&T can take some time, but between Rowan and very capable county attorney, these things do happen, so it's great. Thank you, Molly.
Commissioner DeShaw?
Thanks for your work, Rena. I'm glad to see that it's coming together, because I know in the future we are going to need some money for tower replacements, and it's nice to see this.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I'd echo Commissioner DeShaw's comments, and it's quite a deal to be able to get paid to have this agreement. The only thing I'd ask is 2% increase enough? I know our costs are often higher than that.
That's pretty standard. There's kind of a range, and that's usually a negotiating point. So 2% over the course of 25 years will be a significant increase by the end of it.
Is it the sort of thing we can look again at in 5 years? Is that?
We can.
Yeah.
Those are 5-year terms, and so that always allows us to open up a contract. But when you do that, there are risks associated with that as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it's a pretty competitive contract, I think.
Okay. Well, thank you again.
Any other questions, comments? Entertain a motion to approve this lease with AT&T.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Commissioner Room Technology.
Okay, so we've had a few discussions of what some of the issues around doing meetings in this room. One of the issues that we have is, having this mobile smart TV over here for presentations, and how difficult that is as a means for both the commissioners or the people up in the front of the room to see what's going on, as well as people who are in attendance in the room. So this proposal is looking at trying to solve that problem for purpose of meeting, and for particularly things like PowerPoints or other presentations where people would like to see the content that somebody's talking about. So basically what we're proposing is putting a small, not computer, but monitor in front of each chair up there, which would be a simulcast. And then having some sort of projection behind you. We're going to start with trying to maybe make a projector work, a high-powered, high-lumen projector, because we have a screen that's built in back there that would also be showing the same information. If the projector doesn't work, or if when we test it, we see that it's going to put light in your eyes in the front, then we would probably go to more of a large smart TV back there. But we're going to start trying to use the technology that's already in the room so that we don't have to have a lot of building costs. I think what would be showing on there most of the time would be our new agenda software, which would be split screen. So half of it would show the agenda, and the other half could show the meeting materials that are being discussed at that moment. And it would be right in front of you, simulcast. Probably either somebody like Jeff or maybe April would just be, paging through that for you, so keeping you on pace. You wouldn't be able to skip through there yourself. It would just be for display purposes, okay? So, is that kind of clear? You can ask me questions if it's not. And so it's not a very expensive project. We estimate it to be a little over $3,000. That would be with a high lumen projector. That could give or take a little bit if we end up putting a smart TV in there instead. But it'll be in that ballpark. And I'm suggesting we could pay for that out of the MIS capital account on what we've budgeted for, different kinds of replacement costs for other kinds of equipment like these smart TVs. Any questions?
Okay, questions, comments? Commissioner DeShaw?
Well, I think I was the one that brought it up, because I sit over here and I don't see, when we're going through human services and they're going through their PowerPoint, you can't see a thing from over here. And I don't know how far down it goes, but And then with the thing she's gonna do up here, that'll get on the camera, so the camera will be able to follow through too, so.
And I think the other thing that it'll be useful for is, we have trainings and different kinds of meetings in these rooms. It would also give us a better, more permanent place to project training PowerPoints or other information, so.
Commissioner Mills?
There was 10 monitors, and so would there also be one on Stacy's desk there? Sorry to bring to the
I think I asked him to order an extra one in case one failed,
yeah.
so that we would have the same replacement type, because sometimes these things are hard to
source. Yeah.
Once they change a lot.
Okay.
Commissioner Duker?
Does that include wiring and extra outlets under here?
There is no need for extra outlets under here, and my staff will do the wiring. We think, from a timeline point of view, we would, if you approve this today, we should have the monitors in here by your May meeting. This might take a little longer, depending on what we have to do, but we should at least have that part working by your first meeting in May.
We're using a lot of outlets.
Mhm.
We're currently using a lot of outlets, so that was part of our discussion. Do we have enough plugins back here? So just keep that in mind.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve $3,148 to provide a semi-class projector and individual monitors for commissioners.
So moved.
Okay. Second or support?
Support.
Okay. All those in favor, aye. Raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
going to relinquish this mic to Rowan, who'll give
Okay.
the radio communication update.
Okay, radio communication quarterly update. Rowan Watkins?
Good morning.
Morning.
So this will be the quarterly update. It'll be a little more brief than last time, and we'll try to keep it to just the items that we think the commissioners and the public are most concerned with and want to see, but it covers the list of items that we discuss and provide updates for to the 911 Emergency Communication Committee. So today we'll just cover the remaining armor sites, BDA project that we have, and then a summary of the high-level cell service projects. And stop me anytime if you have questions, and as normal, I'll stand for questions at the end. For our armor sites, the two remaining to be built in Cook County are the Mitt Lake and the Siegel Lake or Hall 3 site. Mitt Lake was approved through our conditional use permit process, and they're waiting for the snow to melt or for access to go up to do boring on the site, and that's how they will determine the foundation needs. Everything else is set. Once that's done, the bid process will go out for the foundation through MnDOT's processes, and construction will happen this year. The same is true for Siegel or Hall 3, except that went through the Forest Services process, and that document has been executed. The boring needs to be done. The snow is melted there, and in fact, they dropped off tower sections and hardware at that site yesterday. So those are well on their way. Moving on to the BDAs, we've been talking about how to provide coverage along Highway 61, knowing that no additional armor sites in those areas are going to be built by the state of Minnesota, and these BDAs are what we believe the most user-friendly and cost-effective combination of way of doing that, low maintenance, and really provide seamless coverage between the armor system, and it's just really extending that.
Could you please remind us what BDA stands for?
It's a bidirectional amplifier.
Thank you.
And so it's taking an existing weak signal and re-amplifying it so that it works for the radios on the ground.
Thank you.
Yep. These are just kind of key areas along Colville and the Hovland area, and we've had a design for the Colville site reviewed and approved or supported by the 911 Communications Committee. And per that committee's recommendation, we're moving forward with a conditional use permit application. So we're submitting that application. That is one of many steps that'll need to happen. So we get local approval for an area for the conditional use permit. It's on county tax forfeit property. From there, we'll move on to getting approval from the SECB, the State Emergency Communications Board, because they interact with the armor frequencies. And then from there, we'll be likely looking for support from our partners and grant options for funding. The Tofty, very similar, except the landowner is MnDOT. It's a MnDOT gravel pit in Tofty. And so we're working through both understanding and then moving forward what's going to be required to use that permit. But the 911 Communications Committee, again, reviewed that plan and supports it. And again, that committee is just a stakeholder of a group of armor users and public safety officials, ambulance, fire chiefs, school, Arrowhead Electric, and so on. Moving on to cell service, the AT&T at the old Ski Hill Road was just approved by you guys, so thank you for that. That's a good deal for us in a lot of ways, efficient use of an existing tower, and will provide better service for us. AT&T on at this what we call the Sawbill Tower, which is just off the grade, sort of near the Sawbill Trail. There's a three-way lease between the county, MnDOT, and AT&T that is close. That one and the old Ski Hill Road one are very likely to be built 2019. I'm pretty confident they will be built this year. And then two other ones that are possible, but not as for sure, would be AT&T and Hovland. We have a lease mostly agreed upon and a site plan that looks good, but we need approval from the DNR. The DNR owns the Hovland site, so we're working to get that approval so that AT&T can co-locate on the existing tower at Hovland, start providing service there. And then the other one is T-Mobile at Mid-Trail, and the landowner there is the Forest Service, pending land exchange. And they are working with the Forest Service, they being T-Mobile, to get a lease in place there as well. So for those two sites, should we get approval from the DNR and the Forest Service respectively, then we should be set to move forward with those as well. That will conclude my report, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, thank you for the informational update, Rowan, and all you do. And any questions, comments? Start with Commissioner Mills.
Thank you. Could you give me just a quick summary of the towers where AT&T will be adding or building on? Is Verizon there currently? And it sounds like the Tofty one.
So for the new ones, no. The one that was just approved, the old Ski Hill Road, they're co-locating on a tower above Grand Marais where Verizon already is. At Hovland, where they're looking to go, T-Mobile is the only cell service provider there. Verizon's shown interest, but had backed off, and now AT&T is stepping up. And at Sawbill, AT&T would be the first one to go. So I think for a couple of reasons, T-Mobile and AT&T are more aggressively building out their networks.
Did you say Mid-Trail, or the up the trail one was?
Mid-Trail would be T-Mobile, and that would be, there is no other existing cell service there now.
Yep. So this is kind of a big deal for those areas.
Unlike Hovland and Grand Portage before that, this is cell service in areas that have never had it before.
Thank you.
Commissioner DeShaw?
How's the thing going in Hovland with AT&T and the Forest Service, or the DNR?
We were a little bit back and forth on the lease stuff, and they were a little slow getting us the construction drawings. And the way that our lease is with the DNR, they need the construction drawings before they'll approve anything on the ground. So we have that. We actually just got it last week and then forwarded that information to our contact at the Department of Lands and Minerals with the DNR who handles the lease. And we have a good relationship with them. It went well last time, but for their own purposes, you had to call out the carrier specifically, and so we need to get that changed or get AT&T incorporated in there, included.
With FirstNet, is that putting pressure on AT&T to expand?
I think it is driving a lot of what they're doing. We're seeing not just an increase in where they're building out, but fundamental changes at their sites. All of these new sites that they're proposing show backup generators, and that's not the case before. And in fact, they're retrofitting old sites that we have here in the county to have backup generators, whereas before they had just banks of batteries that, like in our last windstorm, after 8 hours or so, maybe even less, like in Grand Portage, the batteries failed because the power wasn't up by then, and you lost all of your connections. And for a company that's billing FirstNet as a public safety asset, it's a good thing that they're doing that.
Commissioner Dukert?
What does FirstNet have, 2 years left to meet their 5-year deadline?
I would have to look. They have incentive-based milestones.
Okay.
So there's different milestones and different timelines, and they're financially incentivized and penalized if they don't meet those through the state of Minnesota.
I'm sure there's going to be some added pressure. It was just on the national news the other day about why don't we have cell service throughout the United States. They weren't focusing on us, but it's very interesting.
Yeah, and I think to the state, to ECN and DPS's credit, they really push to make sure it gets built out equally and into rural Minnesota more than just the metro. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Rowan, for all you do and meeting with us today, and very informative.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
Next on the agenda is an abatement of 3 properties, and we have our assessor, Todd Smith. Before you start, will you need approval on each one of these individually or on all 3?
Individually.
Okay, thank you. So let's just take them one by one, and, okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
As Commissioner Bersham stated, we have 3 abatements. The first of which is the fire that destroyed Thelma Hedstrom's property last October. I went up there right after the fire, and it destroyed every structure on it completely to the ground. So the way it's described in here is a little bit misleading, but we are abating her full taxes that are derived from the structures. She's still paying taxes on land, of course, but in this case, all of the structures being gone, we've made the adjustments so that she's basically changing the land value for the 2 months of October that she lost, and we've changed them going forward into 2019 for having no land or structure values on the property. So value went from $297,000 to $106,000. So that's the first one. My recommendation is, of course, to abate that fully, as it's an optional thing, an abatement. This is what's called a local option. We don't have to abate properties, but I think in cases of fire like this, I think it's the proper thing to do. So my recommendation is to abate it this way.
Any questions from anyone? Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to have an abatement on the parcel number 52-226, 4220, and that will be a full credit for taxes in 2019 payable, and for 2018 abatement approval for 2 months.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Second abatement is for an Edwin A. Wright. Due to some health concerns, there was some misunderstanding between the assessor's office and Mr. Wright as to where his primary residence was. Had to do with the health of his wife. We were under the impression that he was moving away, and that was not the case. So we're correcting that and abating it back to homestead status for the Pay 19.
Any questions, comments? I'd like a motion to have an abatement of parcel number 49-632-2415 for a homestead exemption.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand and aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The next abatement
Is for
homestead.
a Anders Zimmer, and this is a homestead. They did apply for homestead. It didn't get processed in the correct amount of time. So for the Pay 19, it wasn't changed to homestead status, it was non-homestead. So we're just abating that from Pay 19 taxes.
Questions, comments?
So moved.
So moved. Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
The right
Todd.
thing to do. Next, we have a resolution from our auditor on post-insurance debt compliance policy.
Mr. Chair, so we currently have a policy. A lot of this in bonding was driven by the crash, 2007 and 8, and these things have tightened up a little bit every couple of years. So this current policy, the basic changes are the entire paragraph on the background on the SEC, and the change in the 8 procedures. There were 1 through 7 in the prior policy, not much difference in the details. Just a little bit of background. So we do this kind of compliance every year. There's an annual disclosure. Ellers actually takes this information from us. We produce a report, and then they disseminate it to the financial entities in the New York area for bonding. This is for all of our bonding purposes. It encompasses arbitrage, taxation on all our bonds. Since we primarily issue tax-exempt debt, then you have to maintain this system to prove that you're maintaining your tax-exempt status, because it's such an advantage to investors and for us to sell these bonds.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, entertain a motion to approve the attached, it's a resolution adopting post-issuance debt compliance policy for tax-exempt governmental bonds.
So moved.
Support. Second? Okay, all those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, also, a purchase agreement for wetland banking credits.
Yeah, this is required actually for our airport project. It's one of the things that happened with the clearing of the land was that we disturbed and replaced some of the wetland with construction, and so we have to buy credits, and so this is the number of credits that we have to purchase has already been determined. We've looked at the place to buy them. The preference is to buy them in Cook County, and there's a bank, and the best option you'll see in the contract here proposed is with Dennis Laboda. He has enough credits to cover the entire needs for this, rather than piecemealing it or having to buy them outside of the county. In order to get the grant to pay for these, we have to actually have the purchase agreement in place. So it's ahead of the grant process. The grant is in process. We won't hear about that until probably August. And that grant will either be all paid in 2019, or potentially, if we don't get Lake County's or Silver Bay's excess grant funds, there's a certain type of grant funding we're using for this. We may get theirs because they're closing down. If we do, we'll pay for all of it this year. If not, we'll use this same type of grant funding, our allocation for 19 and 20, and we may pay for part of it this year and the rest of it next year. In either case, it'll be covered by grant funds in the 90-10 allocation. Yeah, in the motion, I would ask to authorize the board chair to sign. It isn't designated on there yet, and that the closing date is still to be determined. The seller would like to close ideally by May 1st. I don't see any objection to that. We just have to determine a place and a time to do the signatures, so. So time and date to be determined, and board chair to sign.
Any questions or comments? Just sort of look at me. Yes. Commissioner Reyes?
I'm not too familiar with this process, and so we're paying an individual.
Yeah, because people will set their land aside if they
Sure.
have wetlands.
And then that will never be touched?
They call that a, yeah.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, they have to put that in for perpetuity. And then, once we do this, and the money changes hands, and then, the Land Services Office, then they will sign off on actually transferring the credits, our wetland specialist.
Kind of wish Todd was still here, but I'm curious now, when we purchase those credits and that land is set aside, what happens tax-wise on that?
I don't know.
taxed as wetlands.
That's a separate.
I don't think I don't know that that changes.
The credits.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Generally, the wetland credit process is that wetlands are identified and created and become a bank of wetland credits that can be used or purchased or bought for mitigation for other construction projects. And one of the issues related to the clearing and the extension of the runway was that X number of acres of wetlands were disturbed without prior mitigation. So what we're doing is we're going back in arrears and making that whole, and we have to purchase the credits to show due diligence. So the bank the Labotas have already, the tax has already been adjusted, the bank has already been set, and they're limited as to how many credits they can sell in a period of time, and then, of course, they can only sell until they're gone. But that's in exchange for making those wetlands available for that, then they are compensated for the value of those. And so the county has looked into creating a wetland bank with some of the county-owned property.
Yeah.
And it's a long process to go through to do that. But this mitigation is fixing an impact that happened when the runway was extended and the clearing was done around it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have a question, I guess, about the specific project. It was more just the general understanding. And so this is, I can go down a rabbit hole. I'll stop. Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? So I'll entertain a motion to authorize the board chair to sign a purchase agreement for wetland banking credits at a cost of $240,000, and that signing will be at a determined date. Does that cover it?
It's not, just the value is a little off. It's not 499 cents. 240,499.
240, right.
Just to make sure we don't short them $400.
$499.
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Well, did you have a further discussion, Commissioner DeShaw?
Oh, I was just, this isn't about saving wetlands, this is just about money.
Just kind of moving.
That's all I can, the almighty dollar, you can fill in whatever you want, it just costs you money.
Well, and that was the rabbit hole I was going to go down.
Yeah.
Actually, was just about there needs to be people, in order for this to happen, there needs to be people willing to set aside the wetlands, and it was just really interesting. If nobody was willing, then what would happen? Like,
My ancestors weren't willing to set aside wetlands, they were just
Forced.
classified as
Sure,
wetlands, yes.
sure.
If we want to go
Yeah,
down another
that's
rabbit
good.
hole.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
It's debatable what's the ultimate impact on wetlands overall. There's some incentive for people to leave some land alone.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, it's very interesting. Well, thank you for bringing that. That's the rabbit hole I was going to go.
I'm not afraid to go down it.
Just didn't know where it end.
So we're ready to vote?
Yeah.
Sure.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? County Attorney Hicken, approve hire of temporary attorney staff.
Thank you, Chair. So I have essentially 3 items in front of the board related in part to the planned medical leave of one of my staff. And there's this law clerk position that is partially meant to make up for her hours out of the office, and also just as a good practice for helping to staff rural county attorneys' offices and rural attorney positions in general, and I can expound on that if you'd like. The 3 action items for you are to authorize signing contracts with 2 different contract attorneys, Vern Swanham and Charlie Schumacher, and the third is to authorize payment of a living expenses stipend for law clerk Amanda Sackmaster. So, well, there are 2 contracts for these contracted attorneys. It's not my intent to replace one assistant county attorney with 2 contract attorneys. I just need them both available, and generally they work together and understand that if one can't be in the office for a court day or for a day that I'm out of the office, then the other is going to be. So, and that's essentially when I'll require contract work. If it's a court day and I need to be in and out of the courtroom all day, or some attorney needs to be in and out of the courtroom all day, this contract attorney can be that attorney so that I can remain available for all the other duties of my job that are not court-related. And then when I need to be out of the office for various reasons, I have a planned training, and I have witness prep in Duluth, for example, and a case I'm covering in Lake County that I'm going to trial on next month. These attorneys can be in the office, so if things come up, they can respond. They're both retired prosecutors out of St. Louis County, and they're excellent. I also included a clause in Charlie Schumacher's contract because I'm using him in a consultation role on a specific case that's come up recently. So I asked for a lower hourly rate for consultation purposes. And then the law clerk, Amanda Sackmaster, I went down and did interviews of different law students. I think that was in February, and interviewed a handful of law students from all 3 law schools. She, I think, will be a good addition to the office. She'll work between 30 and 35 hours a week, depending on need. And her living expenses stipend will come out of my attorney forfeiture fund, which is designated funds for law enforcement purposes. So a main purpose that she'll have is appearing at first appearances and bail hearings. It's a good job for a brand new law clerk, and she will be supervised by me. I have obligations under ethics rules and under student practice rules to make sure that I'm in the courtroom when she is, until or unless she, gains a certain level of competency, and I'm confident that she can handle that work without me. If she were to take any cases to trial, even if it were like a speeding ticket trial, which is maybe the most that we would give her, then I'm required to be in the courtroom the whole time. So, but I'll just say that inviting law clerks to law offices is kind of an integral way of training lawyers, and has been traditionally for decades. So you get, as a law clerk, you don't get paid much at all, but you get legal experience, you get exposure to a law office. And then rural law offices are having a harder and harder time recruiting. This is one way that we can expose law students to the rural, life in a small town law office or a small county attorney's office. So it's a good way to kind of keep our market, I guess, of potential lawyers. available for questions.
Okay, Commissioner DeShaw,
No questions.
No questions.
Commissioner Mills?
I'll just add that these contracts have a couple of errors that I need to proofread out of there, but I
Commissioner Mills?
wouldn't make any substantial changes.
I don't have any questions, no. Thank
So
you.
we could make this in one motion as stated?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd entertain a motion to delegate signatory authority to the county attorney for agreements with attorneys Vernon Swanum and Charles Schumacher. Also approve hire of law clerk Amanda Sackmaster as a temporary employee and authorize payment of $4,000 living expenses stipend.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Administrator Cadwell, capital projects update.
Chair Bershheim, if I could, I'd have Judy Hill come forward and address item B and C.
Okay.
So that we can respect her time as well.
Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for allowing me to present before the board. So I would like to present items B and C, which was amended to the agenda today. And item B is the 5 job descriptions. So our job descriptions are reviewed by the Personnel Committee, and then the Personnel Committee makes recommendations to take them before the board. And I'm going to kind of break them into 3 groups. The first one will be the MIS System Administrator, and then I'm going to group together the mechanic positions, and then the other one will be the County Assessor. So the MIS System Administrator, that job description, the 2 main changes were that a bachelor's degree is required in computer engineering or electrical engineering or related field, and also that the low voltage certification is recommended rather than required. So what mostly changed is, the description, the responsibilities are the same, the scoring's the same. The minimum qualifications are where we changed it a little bit. And part of the reason for that is to make it more in line with most of the jobs that are 170, and also to make it in line with requirements we are applying for an H-1B visa for this employee, and H-1B visas require a college degree. The position needs a college degree, and really this position requires a college degree or equivalent.
Would you like us to take action on that, or go through all of them?
How about should I go through all of them?
Sure. We can do them all at once.
And then the next 3 I was going to kind of group, because the first one, the highway mechanic, is actually a brand-new job description, although the employee has been working in that position for quite a while. Under the bargaining agreement, the job description was to be made for a mechanic in the highway department. The job grade had been set, which seemed in line with the other positions. And so this mechanic description lists the essential functions and minimum requirements. And they also align pretty much with other counties' mechanic job descriptions. This would be mostly for heavy equipment mechanic. What happened, though, when we looked at this job description, is we said, well, maybe we better look at the shop foreman as well, which would be the mechanic's lead, or not exactly supervisor, but lead person. And so we updated that one as well. And the shop foreman, mostly what we updated was the lifting. When at the very end, all 3 mechanic-related job descriptions say require lifting heavy equipment and moving parts. And at one time it said weighing up to 100 pounds, and we changed that to 50 pounds. 100 pounds would get us in trouble, really. We don't want to see employees lifting 100 pounds, and we have equipment for that. So that was one of the changes in all 3 job descriptions. And the shop foreman, in looking at his job description, we also realized he really does pretty much everything the mechanic does, except maybe a lower percentage of the time. So we added a sentence stating that in the essential functions and responsibilities. And then the assistant mechanic, we just cleaned up the wording in the requirements, the licensing requirement for a Class A license, so it matched the mechanic position and the shop foreman's position. So they all had matching requirements. So that was kind of the reasoning behind updating the other two, the shop foreman and the assistant mechanic, is just to make them in line with the mechanic. So all three of those kind of have parallel job descriptions, with responsibilities and requirements. Then I'm going to move on to the last one, and that's the county assessor. And we are posting for a county assessor. And when we went to post the position, one thing we needed to clarify is the qualifications. And so the qualifications, we worked with the Commissioner of Revenue to include, to be considered for approval by the Commissioner of Revenue, a candidate must be licensed as an accredited Minnesota assessor and able to achieve senior accreditation within 2 years, or currently a senior accredited Minnesota assessor. It's one of the requirements we clarified. We fixed some of the wording. We also added physical requirements of this position, which were just plain missing. This is an appointed position, so under the Keystone job evaluation system, not all the appointed positions had fleshed out job descriptions. And so when we went to post this, we realized it needed fleshing out a little more, so we added the physical requirements of the job and the working environment, which matches the rest of the assessor positions, so they're parallel with that. Do you have any questions on any of the job descriptions?
Commissioner Duker?
No questions.
Michelle?
So who's the shop foreman now?
The shop foreman is Steve Boots.
Who's the assistant mechanic?
We don't have an assistant mechanic. So the mechanic is Wes Higgins. And right now, we have 2 people in the mechanic shop, and that's probably the way it would stay. We really don't have room for an additional mechanic at this point.
Commissioner DeShaw, one of the reasons that this came up is that when Wes was first working, he was working as an assistant mechanic, and then received his credentials for heavy equipment training, which at the union's request really qualified for the mechanic's position. So we have, in several instances, we have more positions than we have staff, because that allows us flexibility in hiring people and flexibility in recognizing when people receive credit or credentials like that. So we did not add a position, we just have an entry-level position in if we had a vacancy and that were appropriate.
And another, would it be going against that 49er contract to have a mechanic out in a grader?
There are stipulations about what work individuals can do, and so there are stipulations in the contract related to that.
That allows it or it doesn't allow it? Because I know Wes was out grading this winter when it was snowing, so.
Yep. There are provisions, and then there are, when individuals work out of class, they end up being compensated out of class, or it's recognized, the time is accounted for that way. So there are provisions and there are allowances.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're not.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you for writing the summaries and the description of the summaries. That helps keep everyone on the same page and what's happening and the changes there. I don't have any questions, so.
Okay. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the 5 county job descriptions as presented to us.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay,
Yep.
all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, social worker 1 posting.
Yes, so we recently received the resignation of Diana White, a social worker one, and she said her resignation would be effective May 10th, 2019. And that's included in a handout that I think you received a paper copy of. We just added this morning. We just received this resignation this morning. And we are requesting that the board approve posting to fill the social worker one vacancy. And the reason we're requesting kind of on a short notice is this does take quite a while to fill, and the sooner we can get started in the approval process, the better.
Any questions or comments? Entertain a motion to approve the posting for social worker 1.
So moved.
Okay, second.
Accept the resignation first.
I'll support with the amendment of accepting the resignation and posting for the new position.
Okay, was that part of it? I'm sorry.
Yes,
It's-
yeah. And I do want to thank Diana White for her service.
And I
We-
agree to the amendment, thank you.
Okay,
we
thank you.
regret-
And that was my comment, is usually we accept resignations with regret.
Okay.
Thank you,
So,
Diana.
everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well,
Okay, the capital projects
Thank you, Judy.
update.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Chair Bershheim. I appreciate the questions that were raised this morning in public comment about not having all the material. And the only explanation I can give, which you're aware, is that if I would have provided the material on Thursday, I would have had one quote for a project. And as of today, I have 2 quotes for a project, which put us in a much better position. So, and I've received general questions from some of you on each of these projects, so I wanted to give a general overview and let you know that additional information is always forthcoming, and if you have questions about these ongoing projects, feel free to contact me at any time. On Thursday last week, we met with Tim Meyer and the contractors who were awarded the contract for the Hovland Public Works Facility to review contract items and to determine the colors and the fittings and the features and specify the window sizes and get everything going that we needed to get going to make sure that that this project is delivered on time and on spec. So we are at the point of reviewing contracts and finalizing the last of the contract details. Attorney Hicken has, I believe you have a copy of those contracts, and we've got a couple of weeks identified as giving us time to review those and make sure that we finalize them and get them signed and delivered appropriately. The substantial completion date of the project is December 31st, 2019, according to the bids that were let and approved previously. So we anticipate that we would be on the site working on the project as soon as road restrictions are lifted, and that we would probably take the delivery of the building and start the erection of the building on or about August 1st. But an actual schedule of the work, anticipated work, will come out to you as soon as we get the contracts completed. The YMCA daycare bathroom remodel, I wanted to give an update. Last week, it was discovered when they started taking the carpet tile out that there was asbestos-containing tile in the flooring, so they had to stop immediately and make sure that that the room was safe and nothing was disturbed and everything was okay, and that we find get a contractor to do the asbestos abatement for us so that work can continue. The contractor on site, Marshall Handyman Services, got one contract proposal for asbestos abatement from Asbestos Control and Consulting Team for their services and testing. Their proposed contract was $15,203. At our building management, YMCA, and county meeting on Friday, we talked about this bid, and we identified somebody else in the area who has done asbestos abatement work for us, and Mavo Systems out of, I believe they're out of Duluth, yep, out of Duluth, gave us a bid for $5,640 to do the same containment, and they're available to do the work on approximately the same time frame. So having had a conversation to talk with Marshall Handyman Services and coordinate the schedules, I would, and the fact that we did not have a contingency in this project, and this estimate is more than I can personally approve, I would ask the board to approve the proposal from Mavo Systems for $5,640 for the asbestos abatement required to move on with the bathroom project. Or I would take questions about where we're at with that.
Okay, so let's take care of that one first, and then we can go back to any questions about the Hoveland project. Any questions about this Y update? Go ahead.
Where's the $5,600 coming from?
Commissioner DeShaw will have to come from the building fund. It's, my primary disappointment is that this wasn't identified in the architectural point as being something to consider, because if we would have put a 10% contingency on the project when we first identified it, then this would fall under that, and we would just get it done if we would have known that there was the possibility of asbestos-containing tile in there. The fact that we were trying to deliver this project as economically as possible, as locally as possible, and as quickly as possible, we end up with this change order to the project.
Commissioner Duker?
Can we get an update in May where our building fund is at? I know we put a little extra in there for 19, but we've had a couple of different things come up. And
Brady,
I'm
is
not
that-
going to say the first meeting in May, when I know it'll take a little bit to put it together.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Brady? Okay.
Thank you, Brady.
Commissioner Mills?
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I mean, I do actually, sorry. So looking at the building overall, we were kind of doing a space assessment of that building.
Mhm.
Would this sort of thing come up, or can we identify potential future surprises?
So the first answer to the question is this older portion of the building is not a priority area for the review of the building. We're going to be looking at primarily the mechanical and the locker rooms and the plumbing.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the use of other spaces, but we're primarily going to be, in our kickoff meeting, I think is Thursday this week.
Okay.
For that project. So no, I don't know that this would have been identified at that point in time.
Okay. And, thank you. And, how, I guess I'm just not familiar enough with the old part and the new part. There is more old part though, so there could be other issues later.
There is more old part.
Yeah.
The old part is the gymnasium and the old locker rooms. Yep.
Okay.
I would say that we were planning to go ahead with a project in the women's locker room to do some work in there and some abatement work and some correcting work, and we decided not to do that until we had the opportunity to do the walkthrough and the assessment. So we have put off putting out fires in some situations to get a complete picture of the improvements that are needed so that we can be more effective with the use of those things. But
great.
I think that's a valid question, and I will make sure that we ask that question on Thursday if there's other things any other old things that might come up.
Yeah.
There were a couple of times when that could have happened, but this is one time when we certainly can make it happen.
That was all. I'll make a motion to approve was it 5640 for Mavo?
5640 for Mavo.
Yep.
Support.
Coming out of the building fund.
Okay, all those in favor, by aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
And then
The Hoagland Job Project, any questions or comments about that? That's just an informational topic, but if you have any questions now, Commissioner DeShaw, if you...
I'd like to follow up with what Gord was talking about on saving the old building for storage, cold storage or whatever, instead of tearing it down. It ain't gonna fall down. We know that, because it hasn't yet. But it would, I would hate to see the old building tore down. You know, you go up, you know, if something needs to get put in there and plugged in the winter or whatnot, just to get out of the weather, or if you need sign storage or anything else. So.
Is it the old building where the new building's going?
No.
Okay.
Commissioner, any response on that, or I think that's a concern? Okay, Commissioner
Can that be
Cook?
brought to the highway advisory meeting?
Yeah.
Chair Bersheim and Commissioner DeShaw, Engineer Foster suggested that if we were going to keep that building, we should approve that building so that it is safe. And if we're not going to spend that money, then it should be abated. And of course, we can have that conversation in the next highway advisory meeting. It is scheduled to be abated, but it is scheduled to be abated after the new building is complete, structurally complete, so.
So we would look at how much it costs to abate it and how much it would cost to make it sound.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Are you comfortable with that? Okay.
That would more than likely take a structural engineer contract.
Upon her recommendation for us to do anything with it, yes, she would want somebody to evaluate its
Because we'd have
structural
to-
integrity.
For liability issues, we'd have to make sure that we have some data. Commissioner?
That was my same exact question.
Well, if that's the case, Myron, we got a bunch of old wooden ones to tear down at the other shops.
Could be. Yeah, it's something we should talk about in the future. Definitely, yeah. So that could certainly be a discussion about a capital plan in the future, which I think we'll be attempting to do. Okay, so let's just go to employee concerns, commissioner concerns, commissioner reports. Does anyone have one? I've got one. Okay. County Administrator Cadwell and I attended an intergovernmental meeting on April 10th, and this is where we meet with the DNR, the United States Forest Service, the 1854 Treaty Authority, Fond du Lac Reservation, as well as Lake and St. Louis County representation there, and also Grand Portage is invited to that as well. At that meeting, we got an update that we requested on Cook County United States Forest Service Land Exchange. And Jeff, you can help me with this, and I appreciate you writing this up. I'll quickly just review. The land exchange involves 1,200 acres of federal land and 1,900 acres of non-federal lands. And as you recall, the United States Forest Service will gain landlocked parcels within the BWCA from the county, and that was what they receive, and the county would gain access to parcels outside of the BWCA. And the county has identified uses for these parcels that include infrastructure, gravel resources, and recreational development. If everyone remembers that we almost completed this a couple of years ago, or a little less, and there were some discrepancies found in the mineral rights with the state of Minnesota, the United States Forest Service, and governmental offices. And so the Minnesota state attorneys were working on deed language that would satisfy state requirements but provides land protections that the United States Forest Service requires, and it has to do with rights to minerals and all that, and that gets very detailed, but I think for purposes, that's why it was held up. And I know that we had actually signed documents here, and it was turned down by the state. So significant steps, once the deed language is complete, will be recertified in another assessment of the parcels, which is now, I think, being looked at, and a new assessment, depending upon the deed language, is being finalized. So this is in process again, and hopefully we'll have something, coming up within a year. This has been something that's been brought up in these meetings for some time, and obviously the other counties are involved in it as well, and so we've been trying to put as much pressure on, and I think the United States Forest Service has really been making strong efforts, even though it's been a process of 18 years. So that's basically where we're at with that. Wait and see, but it sounds promising, or appears to be promising. The other issue of concern is that, and we talked about, was the Thigh-Blotnick. And this is where St. Louis Lake and Cook counties get evaluation of federal lands, and it's called the Thigh-Blotnick program. It's based upon a law. And these federal dollars are specific to BWCA lands and are provided by the federal government to the counties instead of paying regular county property taxes. The last appraisal was made in 2009, and at that time, the payments were increased from $704,000, 240 cents, to $2,025,000. But the Congress sequestered 7% in 2014. And so we had a payment to $1,891,275 instead of the $2,025,000 in 2018. This process is done every 10 years, and it directly affects the value of the payments that we're going to receive. So we're very concerned about this. I believe, any percent decrease is going to affect our budget planning process, and any increase would be more than welcome. And there's some speculation out there, but it's all conjecture and pretty much a guessing game. So this is a real concern to us, and we expressed it at this meeting, especially the county commissioners. There was 3 of us there from each county that were starting the budget process, and this amount of money is really huge in a small county like ours. I mean, we're talking a lot of levy dollars as something we have to consider, and that impact, and so it's not only immediate for next year's budget, but it's also going to have a big impact on how we budget for the next 10 years. So we're waiting on that, and I guess I would try to answer any questions, or Mr. Cadwell could maybe as well, but it's really something we can't say anything about right now. My only comment is this is typical of what's been going on with some other issues in our federal government.
Was there any indication on when we're likely to find out?
No.
Okay.
So that's the issue, and people are working hard on that, and Department of Agriculture and the United States Forest Service are saying, they're just saying we don't know. And I think we've talked, I know, about some of the funding that we received last year, and we still don't know what we're supposed to do with it. And so hopefully, something can happen, and this would be a good project, I think, for those that are elected to federal office to try to help us with that. Any other comments, questions on that? Okay. Any other reports?
Commissioner DeShaw and I will be going to a Rumble Strip listening session with MnDOT and the highway engineer on Thursday, later in the afternoon. And there's room available if any other citizens contact the highway engineer to get on the list. They want to keep it to 10 just for safety. But that's what we're doing.
Okay. Any meetings to note, or anything else? I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Well, I attended the hospital board meeting, and that change to the care center funding is passed through committee and still on track, and so that's alarming. It's not a for sure thing. There's speculation that perhaps it's just used as horse trading and leverage. I don't know. They don't know, but Rob Eklund is aware of it, and yeah, please.
Can you add some detail on what it is?
Well, there's a change in how the care center is compensated, and so there, I believe it was a minimum increase of, decrease in the compensation of, I think it was $225,000, and so then that would have to be made up by hospital levy, and it's I think a 25% change in their levy then, which is alarming. But both Representative Eklund and Senator Bach are aware of it, and they have spoken with the governor about it, and it's not just our care center. This is, I think, largely rural, but it's still out there, and so I don't mean to scare you, but just be aware.
Did you say, is that the governor's proposal or legislative?
I believe it's I guess I wouldn't be. I believe it was governor, but I guess I don't know that. I mean, but I think there is one of the branches also has it in one of their bills. So, but not the other. Sorry, I don't know. I don't remember which is which. It is important. Otherwise, I wanted to say that we did attend the a core meeting, and I think there'll be an update from that coming. But DOC was there, and that was an excellent opportunity to hear from them and get a little more perspective on that, and that speaks to your concerns, Gordon. And then also attended AEOA meeting, and it was really interesting. We got an update on what's called the Rutabaga project. It's part of AEOA now, and boy, that really runs parallel with our local Northwoods food project, and so I'm excited to share kind of those resources with that group. But it's an organization like AEOA is much larger and has a lot more sway. I think they have a budget, not Rutabaga, but AEOA has a budget of like $49 million, and so it's a big deal. And to take on local food or regional food, they're focusing on the Arrowhead, and I know the Northwoods Food Project, when I was on the city council, did a green dollar survey to see how much money could be kept in county or grown in county. And this Rutabaga project did something similar for the whole Arrowhead region, and that's pretty staggering too, with the potential that there is. And our region isn't particularly known for farming or agriculture, but it's a concern just for getting more people eating healthy and having more local food available and keeping dollars in the region. So otherwise, I think that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Mills. Anything else from any of the commissioners on meetings to note or meeting updates? Okay, so we have in the packet a Cook County lodging tax for 228.19. That's included in the packet. And I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, rise.
Aye.